Yo, what is going on, y'all? It is your boy AT from AT's Barstool, and today we are back on episode 16 of AT's Barstool. And if you're new to this channel, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and don't forget to follow my Instagram page. Link will be in the bio. But today we are going to be talking about the 2025-2026 NFL schedule release, as all teams has been making offseason moves. They've already made their draft picks, and we are only a couple months away until the NFL season starts. And with that being said, let's get into it. So the first team that we are going to be talking about here is the Arizona Cardinals. Last season they went 8-9 and missed the playoffs. They were third in the NFC West. And this team is led by Kyler Murray, Marvin Harrison, and so on. And this Cardinals team, they have a really young team, not a bad squad. Offensively, they look pretty solid. In defense, they look pretty solid too. So I say they are pretty much in the middle. But we're going to start off with their week one matchup, and that will be against the New Orleans Saints. In my opinion, I think the Cardinals can win this game. And this Saints team is not all that good outside from Chris Olave. And yeah, but I definitely see this Cardinals team winning week one in an easy dub. And then their next game will be the Carolina Panthers, which I also think is also going to be another win, depending on what Bryce Young and T-Mac can do in that game, especially with the Panthers defense. I definitely see Marvin Harrison having a breakout game. Next, their week three matchup will be against the 49ers. The 49ers wasn't healthy, and they also lost a lot of key players this year. But I also feel like that the 49ers can easily win against this Cardinals team. So I will say the Cardinals will end up being 2-1 at that moment. And after the Cardinals play the 49ers, they're going to be playing against a full-on new Seahawks team who has Sam Darnold as quarterback and Jackson Smith and the Jigba as their wide receiver one next year. Since they have no DK and no Lockett, we don't know how the Seattle team is going to do, but I honestly think they could barely, and I mean barely, beat the Cardinals. So I'll say the Cardinals fall to 2-2 at that moment, and then they'll play the Tennessee Titans with Cam warning them, and I feel like that's going to be easy win. So make it 3-2. And after they play the Titans, they're going to be playing against the Colts, which I think they are going to drop to 3-3. And after the Colts, I definitely think they're also going to lose to Green Bay, who's young and has a really good team in with Jordan Love as their quarterback. So they will have to go to 3-4. Next, they will have a bye week in week 8. In week 9, they'll come back and play against Dallas with the newly acquired George Pickens with CeeDee Lamb as the wide receiver one, and also quarterback Dak Prescott if he can stay healthy. I could definitely see the Cowboys absolutely annihilating the Cardinals. So they will go from 3-4 to 3-5, and then they play Seattle again. This time it'll be on the road at Seattle, and I also think that Seattle's going to sweep them. So that will be a 3-6 to end up with. And then they play at home against the 49ers. And now this one, I think the 49ers are going to lose. I think they're just going to get upsetted by Arizona, and they go from 3-6 to 3-7 with that win. And after that, they're going to play Jacksonville with Travis Hunter and Trevor Lawrence and that solid Jacksonville defense, which I also think is going to be another loss so to add on there. And then they will go ahead and play against Tampa. In Tampa, I definitely think that they are going to lose. Baker Mayfield, one of the most underrated quarterbacks this year in the NFL, and would definitely annihilate this Cardinals team. So I will say that. And then for the Rams, yes, the Rams and Cardinals. The Rams, they do have Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams. They have that cool little receiver room and Matthew Stafford with a decent defense. And I honestly think that the Cardinals is also going to lose that game too. I don't think the Cardinals are going to win as much. And then they have a 4-game stretch where they're going to end up playing Houston, Atlanta, Cincinnati, and Los Angeles again. I honestly think they are going to lose to Houston and Atlanta and lose to Cincinnati and barely pass by the Los Angeles Rams. So overall, for the Arizona Cardinals, I do think this Cardinals team is going to go on and go 6-11. Yes, 6-11, miss the playoffs, and I definitely think they are going to have a top 10 pick in next year's draft. If there's anything I know from this, is that the Cardinals, they also do have a newly acquired Paris Johnson Jr., which was a big signing for them at tackle. And other than that, the Cardinals defense not that good, and the offense is solid at times. And yeah, I think they're going to have a down year going into the 2025-2026 season. So yeah. And the next team that we are going to be talking about is the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons in this year's draft did pretty solid as they got two pretty good defensive players in Jalen Walker and James Pierce Jr., which I think James Pierce Jr. is definitely a draft steal. This Atlanta Falcons offense looked solid, and last year their record was the same as the Arizona Cardinals, which they were 8-9 and missed the playoffs. But this team is pretty good, and after that, Kirk Cousins, well, after they had that 8-9 record and Kirk Cousins didn't do well, Kirk Cousins ended up leaving and went somewhere else. As now Michael Penix Jr. is going to be the starting quarterback. As last year he also showed some flashes, but also showed some bad signs. But honestly, I think he is going to be a solid quarterback in this league. And they also got a really good running back in B. John Robinson, and also got a really good tight end in Kyle Pitts, and some solid receivers with Drake London, Darnell Mooney, and Ray McLeod, which I don't think is going to really get it done for them, but I definitely think it's going to be a solid receiving core, especially with Drake London breaking out, or in my opinion, Drake London having a breakout season. Also, the offensive line, it's mid. I mean, Jake Matthews and Landstorm, the two best offensive linemen on this team. This all right, I guess. And then they also got Jesse Bates at safety. Now, I do think that the Atlanta Falcons is going to have a pretty solid year as they're going to start off playing against Tampa, and I feel like they are going to lose that one in a close finish. And then their next game, they play Minnesota with Justin Jefferson and then JJ McCarthy, which we don't know how good he's going to be since he's been injured all last season. And I do think that they are going to lose that game too. Then the Carolina Panthers, it's an obvious win, pretty obvious win. I think it's going to be a blowout. And they play against the Commanders, which Commanders has been the big surprise, and they are going to lose that one with Jalen Daniels as quarterback for the Commanders. So they go down to 1-3. Then they play Buffalo, San Francisco, Miami, New England, Indianapolis in a 5-game stretch. I do think they are going to lose to Buffalo and San Francisco, but they definitely beat Miami in a close one and the Patriots in a blowout. And after that, they go ahead and beat the Colts. So I'll say they're going to be around 4-5 around that moment. And then Carolina, New Orleans, and New York. I definitely see them beating Carolina again, but this time it's closer. Despite being at home in New Orleans, I feel like that is also going to be another win. In the Jets, I do feel like that is going to be another easy win. So they go from what, 3-4? No, not 3-4, 4-5 to about a cool little 7-5 by that time. And then their next games, they're going to be playing Seattle and Tampa. I definitely see them losing to Seattle and Tampa at Tampa, and losing Seattle at home in close matchups. So make it 7-7. Then they're going to go ahead on the road and play the Cardinals, and I see them going on to beat them. And then after that, they beat the Rams, or not the, yeah, they beat the Rams and the Saints, surprisingly. So I will say about a 9-8 record, barely making it into the playoffs this year. I know it's kind of crazy to say, or they just miss out on the playoffs with the roster they have, honestly. So yeah, but they have a pretty easy schedule, honestly. I feel like that they could go 9-8 with this schedule at best in that. But as a whole, I definitely think this is the easy schedule for them. Outside from playing Minnesota, Tampa twice, and Buffalo, I definitely think it's not going to be that easy. But I 100% think that they're going to have a solid year. And the next team that we are going to be talking about here is the Baltimore Ravens. This team is led by Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, and so on. They also have guys such as DeAndre Hopkins, Rashad Bateman, and they also have Mark Andrews. This is a really good squad with a really, really good offensive line. We've seen how the Ravens did last year. They went to the playoffs, beat Pittsburgh, and they went all the way to the divisional round where they lost to Buffalo. And it ended up being another Buffalo versus Kansas City matchup where, yeah, we already know who went to the Super Bowl, the Chiefs and the Eagles. But this Ravens team was really good. They had one of the best defenses in the league and also had one of the best rushing offenses in the league. This team is really dangerous, and I feel like this team is going to repeat the same success they had last year, starting off with their first game of the season being Buffalo. That is going to be a tough one. I feel like that's going to be a really good game, and I definitely think Baltimore wants that revenge on Buffalo, and I feel like they're going to beat them. Yes, I feel like with a final score of 28-30, they beat Buffalo as Lamar and Derrick Henry torched Buffalo's defense and just play a really good game. And Buffalo, I don't think that defense is going to be stopping Baltimore. And I feel like they're going to come out for revenge. So, yeah, Baltimore beat Buffalo. That's what's going to happen. Next game, they play against Cleveland, the Cleveland Browns. That's another win, blowout win. The Cleveland Browns, they don't even know who's going to be the starting quarterback. They got 5 quarterbacks in Shador, Sanders, Dylan Gabriel, Joe Flacco, and so on. Actually, no, they have Kenny Pickett, and yeah, just all those guys for what? But they're going to annihilate the Browns. Then they have a really, really tough 3-game schedule, or not 3-game schedule, but a 3-game stretch where it's going to be ridiculous as they're going to play Detroit Lions. They're going to play the Detroit Lions September 22nd. That's going to be a night game where they're going to lose, in my opinion. And then they play Kansas City, and they're going to lose to Kansas City. And then they play Houston, which I also think is going to be a win, but they barely come out with the win. It's a brutal 3-game stretch, but after that, they're going to be playing the Rams, which is going to probably be a little bit more relaxing. And I feel like that's going to be a win as they win by like 10, in my opinion. After that, we will be seeing the Baltimore Ravens with a 4-2 record before their bye week. Then they played the Chicago Bears, led by former number 1 overall Caleb Williams. And I feel like they are going to win that one. Then they play Miami, Minnesota, and Cleveland, which I think they're going to sweep the Cleveland Browns and beat Miami and somehow fall to Minnesota. So those 3 games right there. And then after that, I also see them playing the Jets. Well, they are playing the Jets, and they are going to go on and beat them easily. Then they play Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, and Cincinnati again. I definitely think they're going to beat the Bengals. The first time, it's going to be at home, so I definitely see them winning that one. Then they beat Pittsburgh at home, and after that, I feel like they're going to go ahead and get upsetted by the Bengals at Cincinnati, which I think is going to be a tough game on the road. And then we will be sitting here and watching them play the New England Patriots, where they're going to win again. And I also see them winning against Green Bay and then lose to Pittsburgh somehow. So as a whole, I do see them going 14-3, if not at best. And the worst they could possibly do is probably go 10-7, but I don't see that happening with the schedule they have. So yeah. So the next team that we are going to be talking about here is the Buffalo Bills, that is led by Josh Allen and James Cook and so on. This Buffalo Bills team came into last season with no Stephon Diggs, which he was on the Houston Texans now, and pretty much cleared out and lost a couple key players too, such as Tre'Davious White and so on. This Buffalo Bills team surprised everybody going back to the AFC Championship, which it all reverts to Josh Allen leading the way, and they lost to the Chiefs, falling short for like the 5th straight year in a row. But in my honest opinion, this Buffalo Bills team looks good. They're really young. They have guys such as Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir, and Joshua Palmer, which they acquired from the Chargers. They also got Dalton Kincaid and so on. In the defense, they got Greg Resinu. They got Ed Oliver. They got a bunch of really good defensive players too. On top of that, and this Bills team with their schedule looks pretty tough, pretty solid. First game against Baltimore, like I said, with the Baltimore Ravens, they're gonna win. They're gonna beat Baltimore in Week 1. I can see it. Allen's gonna go off. It's gonna be a really good game. Uh, Baltimore wants their revenge. I mean, not win. My bad. They lose. My bad. They lose to Baltimore. Baltimore's going to get their revenge. They're going to lay back a little, and the Ravens defense going to step up. So yeah, Week 1, I could see that being a loss. And Week 2, they play the Jets, which I think is another win, or not another win, but their first win in the season. Then they play Miami, New Orleans, New England, which I think all three will be wins. They'll start off 4-1. Atlanta, I can see that as a win. And then the Panthers, that's a win. And then the Chiefs, I can go ahead and see that as a win. I see them taking down Kansas City. So starting the year off 8-1 after the bye week, 2 weeks after the bye, after their bye. Then they play Miami again and they win. And then I see them surprisingly losing. Actually, not surprisingly losing. I actually see them beating Tampa at home. Beat Tampa at home, and then lose to Houston. I feel like they will surprisingly lose to Houston and then beat Pittsburgh and then take down Cincinnati, where they'll go on and take down the Patriots, the Browns, and then lose to the Eagles and then beat the Jets in week 18. That's what I honestly think. So I say about a 15-2 record, honestly, with the schedule they have. Only teams I really see them losing to is the Houston Texans and the Philadelphia Eagles. I feel like the Texans are going to shock everyone this season, especially with that newly improved O-line. That's the reason why I say that. And the Eagles, we already know. The Eagles are stacked, really good team. They could definitely win any game on any given day. Now, the next team I do want to talk about is the Cincinnati Bengals with Joe Burrow. This team is obviously led by Burrow, and they also have Jamar Chase, Chase Brown, T. Higgins on that offense, and Mike Gesicki now as tight end. And they also have a pretty good O line in Orlando Brown, Cody Ford, and Artavius Mims. And on defense, their defense, Trey Hendrickson, and they also got Cam Tyler Britt and Jordan Battle. This defense was one of the worst defenses in the league, and their offense was really good. And the reason why they even won games is mainly because of the offense. And they went 9-8 and had a really good season on the offensive side. And if they fix their defense, or if the defense gets better and does better than last year, then I can definitely see this Bengals team do a lot better. They went 9-8. They went on a little win streak, but sadly missed out on the playoffs. And Denver, because Denver won their playoff game. I mean, not playoff game, won their regular season game against Kansas City, where they took them down 24-0 in a shutout against the backups. But yeah, this Bengals team, if they get their defense right in order and all that stuff, then I can definitely see this Bengals team be really dangerous, as their first game of the year is going to start off in Cleveland. This should be a light game for them. I think it's going to be an obvious win in a blowout. The Browns don't know who their quarterback is. Defense is mid, or yeah, it's mid tier, despite Myles Garrett and so on. And yeah, definitely think that the Bengals are going to beat Cleveland at Cleveland. And then the next games, Jacksonville, I can see them beating Jacksonville. The offense is going to just have a really good game, and I don't think the defense for Jacksonville is going to stop the Bengals offense. Therefore, that goes to my next conclusion, which will be the Minnesota game. This Minnesota game, I feel like it will be back and forth, but I feel like Minnesota will win mainly because of the defense is really bad for Cincinnati, and I feel like Justin Jefferson is just going to run all over the defense, having about a cool 130 yards on like 8 catches, probably, for a couple touchdowns, realistically speaking. But the next game I think they are going to have to play is Denver, or not going to have to. They are going to end up playing is the Denver Broncos. Now, Broncos, they're another team, really good. Bo Nix, and they also had Patrick PS2, Patrick Sturhan. I mean, yeah, Patrick Sturhan, whatever. PS2, and I definitely think that this Bengals team is going to struggle because if the Broncos defense plays really well, then I don't think the Bengals is going to score as much, despite of how good their offense is right now. So yeah, I see them so far 2-2 right now, and then they play Detroit, lose to Detroit. That's another really good team. They have a lot of star power on offense and a lot of star power on defense, and I feel like when Agent Hutchinson is back and healthy, I feel like this Lions defense is going to be dangerous than it is now. So I'll say a loss to Detroit. Green Bay, they play Green Bay and it's at Green Bay. This is going to be another game that's going to be a really good one. I think they are going to win, put up a lot of points. Offense is going to play really well. I don't think their defense is going to hold up. So definitely say a win against Green Bay for sure. And then versus my Pittsburgh Steelers, I definitely think this game is at home in Steelers, or not Steelers, but Acrisure Stadium is one of the toughest stadiums to play in, especially due to the fact that Pittsburgh wins a lot of home games there. So I definitely feel like that Pittsburgh is going to beat Cincinnati, and with the defense that Pittsburgh has, despite the offense being mediocre or looking mediocre so far, I definitely think Pittsburgh is going to edge out the Cincinnati Bengals like they did this year, or not this year, last year in the first time they met. Now, the next game is the Jets. I definitely see the Bengals beat the Jets no matter what. And yeah, that's really it. Self-explanatory. The Bears, now the Chicago Bears. I think this game is going to be close, but I feel like that Cincinnati is going to come out on top. And then the rematch after the bye week against Pittsburgh, I also feel like this game is going to be a revenge game for Cincinnati, just like they did to Pittsburgh last year. Not beating them, but losing to them once and then beating them the next time. I definitely think that's going to happen. And Jamar Chase is going to have a really good day with Joe Burrow as the quarterback, unless something happens. So yeah, I'll say that's another win. And then they come back home and play the New England Patriots, which I also think is going to be another easy win. Self-explanatory. The offense is pretty good and pretty dang unstoppable. So I can definitely see them taking down the Patriots. After that, they play Baltimore, and this is when it gets tough because they play Baltimore back to back. Not back to back, but they play them 2 times in 3 weeks, and they play the Buffalo Bills, which I think the Ravens, they're going to beat the Bengals the first time, and then not the Bengals, the Buffalo Bills, they're going to go on and beat the Bengals, and then the Ravens again are going to go ahead and beat Cincinnati and just kill them the second time around. And then the Miami Dolphins, that's the next game. I feel like that's going to be a win. Arizona and Cleveland are both wins. So, in my honest opinion, so I do see the Bengals going 10-7, making the playoffs as probably like a 6 or 5 seed, depending on how the AFC North, or not AFC North, but the AFC is looking. And I honestly feel like that the AFC North might end up having 3 teams in the playoffs this year, if not 2, and that's going to be Baltimore, Cincinnati. That's my opinion. I think Pittsburgh is going to have another winning season, but barely edge out, win a 9-8, and miss the playoffs. But that is for the part 2. So yeah, we are here for part 1. They're not going to be in part 2 right now. So the next team that will be talked about here is going to be the Chicago Bears, which is going to be led by young quarterback Caleb Williams and DJ Moore and Roma Dunze and so on. They also got Luther Burden now and Cole Kemp, and they got Joe Thuney and DeAndre Swift as the running back. And the offensive line, I feel like, has 100% improved, and the defense has got better. They also have Jalen Johnson, Kevin Byard III, and they also have TJ Edwards, Tremaine Edwards, and so on, and also Sweat. I honestly think that this Bears team is going to be a pretty solid team in the future. And right now, with their schedule looking right now, their schedule looks pretty rough. Looks pretty rough to begin with. First game of the year, Minnesota. It's a rivalry game. I definitely feel like that they are going to go out there and probably put up a good fight. Not probably, but they are going to put up a good fight. against Minnesota, depending on how JJ McCarthy once again does. And Justin Jefferson has been amazing, so I definitely think that they're going to lose that game, mainly because due to the fact they don't have no one guarding Jefferson. I mean, Justin Jefferson. The next game is Detroit, another conference game or division matchup. I think that's another loss. Detroit's going to run all over them. And yeah, it's pretty much self explanatory. Next game is the Dallas Cowboys. I'm telling you, this 3 game stretch is pretty rough. They're going to have CD Lamb, George Pickens on the offensive side with Dak Prescott. Then you got to deal with Micah Parsons and Darius Bland with Trayvon Diggs on the defensive side. That looks really scary. And I don't think that the Chicago Bears is going to take down Dallas mainly because of them 3. And not mainly just them 3, but mainly because of how good Dallas looks right now on the offensive and defensive side. Looks like a really dangerous team. Definitely can see Chicago lose this game and the next game, which is the Las Vegas Raiders, who now has Aston Genty, and they also have no quarterback still. Well, they still, no. They have Geno Smith, my bad. Yeah, they have Geno Smith, and that's really it. I definitely think that will be their first win of the season. Then they have a bye week, cool out, chill, or whatever, after going 1-3 throughout the first 4 weeks. Then they come back against the Washington Commanders, another tough game, and I feel like they are also going to lose. Hopefully, they better hope they don't lose like they did last time off a Hail Mary, which went for a touchdown, and that season, or their season, went downhill right after that game-winning touchdown from Washington. The next game is the New Orleans Saints. That's going to be a win. It's obvious. No questions about it. Baltimore, that's going to be a loss. Cincinnati, that's going to be a loss. It's going to be a good game, but I think it's just going to be a loss. The Giants, they look pretty scary. Can they be good? They can be good, but I don't know. This is going to be close. I feel like the Giants are barely going to squeak past. So yeah, right now they're not looking good right now, as they will only have 2 wins throughout the first 9 games. They'll be 2-7 to begin with. Then they'll come back, play Minnesota, and beat Minnesota at their place. After beating Minnesota, they're going to play Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's defense is amazing, and the offense, they look good, but I don't think that they are going to go ahead and score about 20 plus on Pittsburgh's defense. And I feel like Pittsburgh is going to edge them out a little bit, just a little bit. So yeah, Pittsburgh, I have them winning over Chicago. And then they have to play Philly and Green Bay, which I think they are both losses. And after them two is Cleveland. I feel like they're going to win that one. And when they play Green Bay again, I feel like they are going to get their get back and win. And then they take down the 49ers and surprisingly beat the Detroit Lions for the last game of the season. So with that being said, I definitely see them having a better record than last year, but still missing out on the playoffs, as I see them losing to the, not losing, but beating the Raiders, beating the Saints, that's 2 wins, and then beating the Browns, Packers, 49ers, and Detroit. So end the year off on a 4-game win streak. So I say about a 6-11 record, missing out on the playoffs. And yeah, that's all I think. And the next team I do want to talk about is the Carolina Panthers, led by Bryce Young and T-Mac. Also, they have Adam Thielen and Chuba Hubbard. And honestly, I don't think that this Panthers team is going to do all that well. They had a pretty solid year last year, or not a solid year, but not a good year. But it was better than last year, though. Better than Bryce Young's first season. And other than that, team has a little bit of kind of a weaker schedule. It's up and down. First game of the year, they are going to be playing against Jacksonville at Jacksonville. And I do think the Jacksonville game is going to be a close battle. And I think that the Panthers are barely going to edge out Jacksonville. Next game, they play Arizona. I think they're going to lose that game, honestly. I think Arizona's going to have their way against them. Same thing with Atlanta. Another game, they're going to have their way with them. And then when we get to New England, I can see them having their second win of the season, barely edging out New England. And then they play against Miami and lose. Tyreek Hill is going to have a field day with that Carolina defense. And then they lose again to Dallas. They go to New York and go ahead and barely beat them by about a cool little 6, 7 points probably. And next, they will be playing Buffalo, which in week 8, I think they are going to lose that game in a blowout. Another game is Green Bay, another loss. The Saints, I feel like that's going to be an up and down game, but I think that the Saints are going to edge out Carolina this time. I mean, not this time, but the first time around. And then they play Atlanta again. They're going to lose to Atlanta once again, so get swept. Then they play the 49ers, which is another game I also think they are going to lose. Despite San Francisco losing a lot of key players, they're still a pretty solid football team. And the Rams, same thing. They're going to lose. And then the Saints, they're going to have another good game with them. And this time, I think Carolina is going to beat New Orleans. After that, they play Tampa. And I do see Carolina losing to Temple. I mean, not Temple, Tampa. And then they play Seattle again. Or not again, but they play Seattle and end up losing that one. Next, the last game of the year, they play Tampa and lose that game. So honestly, with that being said, I see this team going about a 4-13 record. Not the best, but yeah, I honestly feel like Carolina is not going to have that good of a year and kind of go down a little. And the next team that I'll be talking about here is the Carolina Panthers, who have Dak Prescott, Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders, CeeDee Lamb, and George Pickens, which got traded to Dallas not too long ago, which I talked about in the last video. Also, they got Jake Ferguson and so on with a really good offensive line with the two Tylers at O-line. And on defense, they got Micah Parsons, Dante Flower Jr., Kenneth Murray Jr. They also have Darius Bland, Malik Hooker, and they have Trayvon Diggs. I honestly think with this schedule that they have right now, I definitely feel like this is a pretty solid schedule for Dallas. I feel like this is a year where they are going to do really well. And not only that, go back to the playoffs at that, depending on how Dak Prescott performs. And first game against Philly, I definitely see that's a loss. It's at Philly, really tough place to play. The team is stacked overall, especially on defense. They're really stacked. And on the offensive side, I feel like they have too much star power for that Cowboys defense. So, yeah, I definitely feel like they are going to be riding back to Dallas on a loss for the first game of the season. Next, they play the New York Giants. And the Giants, I feel like that's going to be a win. Then they played Chicago and Green Bay. Those are also wins, in my opinion. And then they play the New York Jets. I feel like this is a game where it's going to be back and forth. And the reason why I feel like that the Cowboys are going to underperform a little bit, but still pull off a close win against the Jets. Then they play Carolina, which I think is going to be another win. Then they play Washington Commanders, another division rival where I think they are going to lose. And Jalen Daniels is absolutely going to torture this Cowboys defense. And then they play Denver, which I think is another win for them. And then they play Arizona. That's going to be a win, in my opinion. Then they have a bye week, cool off, chill out before they go on and play Las Vegas. And I feel like the Las Vegas game will be their trap game. And what I mean is that is the one game they are going to underestimate the Las Vegas Raiders, and they're just going to somehow perform way better than them and win that game. So I feel like that the Cowboys are going to lose to the Vegas Raiders and feel like that will be their trap game of the year. After that, they go on a 3-game losing streak, if not a 4-game losing streak, losing to Philly, Kansas City, Detroit, and Minnesota. I feel like Detroit and Minnesota is going to come down to the last minute. And then they play the Chargers, where I think that's going to be a win. And then they go ahead and split or even out the series 1-1 with the Commanders. And at last but not least, I see them beating the New York Giants. So yeah, I think that the Dallas Cowboys are going to end the year off with a 10-7 record, making the playoffs. And I feel like that 3-game winning streak is going to help them go all the way up to possibly the divisional round, in my opinion. And the next team that we'll be talking about is the Detroit Lions. And I do think that this Detroit Lions team is really good. They have Jared Goff, Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon St. Brown, Jameson Williams, and so on the offensive side. Defensively, they have Aiden Hutchinson, DJ Reader, Jack Campbell, and so on. This is a really good team. I definitely think this team is going to be, if not one of the best teams. And this is actually my pick, in my honest opinion, that is going to the Super Bowl. If it's not the Eagles, I think it is Detroit that is going to go to the Super Bowl next year. And for multiple reasons. In the first game, they got the first two games of the season for Detroit. I definitely see them beating Green Bay and Chicago. Then they go on and play the Ravens, where I see them win again. Then after that, they play Cleveland, Cincinnati. Both of them are going to be wins. Kansas City, I feel like that is a fluke game, and I feel like they're going to lose that one. And then Tampa, that's another game. Tampa's a really underrated team, and I feel like that game is going to be a trap game for them, so that's another loss in their books. They have a bye week, cool down or whatever, go on the road, or not go on the road, stay at home and play Minnesota, where they're going to beat them. After that, they play the Commanders, Jalen Daniels and them, and I feel like they are going to go ahead and beat them, get their revenge from last year. Then they play Philly, and I feel like that game is going to be a loss. Actually, not a loss, my bad, a win, in my opinion. I feel like that is going to be an upset win, or not an upset, but a surprising win against Philly. I feel like that's going to be a close game. And then the Giants, that's another win. Green Bay, Dallas, both of them are wins. And then they play LA and Pittsburgh. Those are going to be both wins for them. After that, they play Minnesota again and lose this time, as Minnesota will get revenge. And then they play Chicago, and that is a game where I feel like Chicago is going to surprise everyone and win that game. So with that being said, I do see Detroit winning about 13 games and lose only 4, which I think is going to be Minnesota, Tampa, Kansas City, and Chicago. And that's going to be the second time that Minnesota and Chicago meet, where I feel like they're going to lose. And honestly, they are definitely one of the two contenders, in my opinion, in the NFC that is going to go all the way to the Super Bowl next year. And the next team that I'll be talking about here is the Denver Broncos, who is led by Bo Nix and Courtland Sutton, and so on. They do have Evan Ingram, RJ Harvey, Marvin Mims Jr. on the offensive side, and defensively they have Zach Allen, DJ Jones, Nick Bonito, and they also have PS2, one of the best defensive players, or one of the best corners in the league as of right now. And their schedule right now looks pretty solid, as their first game is against Tennessee. I feel like that's going to be an easy dub. And then they play the Colts and Chargers, which I also think are both easy wins for them. After that, they play Cincinnati. They're going to be playing that high power offense. And I feel like their offense is going to not offense, but defense is going to shut down the offense. So I have Denver winning that one. And then they play Philly. I feel like that's a game where Philly ends up beating them, giving them their first loss after starting off 4-0. Then they play the New York Jets. They win that one. They play the Giants. They win that one. Then they go ahead and play Dallas and the Texans. And I feel like they're going to lose to both Texas teams. They're going to go down to, not go down to Dallas, but they're going to lose at home to Dallas and then come down to Texas and lose to them. And then after that, they play their division rivals, Las Vegas Raiders, where they're going to beat them, taking down Ashton Genty and them. And then after that, they play Kansas City, where that's going to be a loss. And then the next game is the Commanders. That's going to be a game where I feel like that's going to be a loss for them. And then they play the Las Vegas Raiders again. That's going to be a win. And after that, they're going to play Green Bay, where I think they're going to surprisingly lose to Green Bay. And after that, they play Jacksonville and Kansas City, which I think they're going to beat Jacksonville, but lose to Kansas City. And then the last game of the season, they're probably going to relax and play against the Chargers and lose that game too. So I see them going 9-8 and missing out on the playoffs a little bit. Yes, they have a really good defense. Yes, they have a young rookie quarterback who's did really well. But I still think they're barely going to miss out. And if they do go 9-8, they're probably going to miss, well, they are going to miss out or barely get in, depending on what it is. And the next team that we are going to be talking about is the Houston Texans. They have CJ Stroud, who's been really well. The Houston Texans had a pretty solid year last year, being the fifth seed and losing to the Chargers in the first round, as CJ Stroud in this offense, they've looked really good and all that the last 2 years. Also, we don't know what is going to happen to Tank Dell with that disgusting knee injury he suffered at the end of last season. So if we see him later on in the season, then I think they'll be fine. But right now, it's looking like they're going to kind of struggle, in my opinion. To their defense, too, and how they play, led by Will Anderson and Derek Stingley Jr. This offense, I definitely think is going to perform pretty well. And I definitely think their first three games are going to end up being wins, beating the Rams, Buccaneers, and Jaguars. And then they play against Tennessee, where I think this is going to be kind of a trap game. But I feel like they're barely going to come out on top and beat Tennessee, going 4-0, before taking on the Baltimore Ravens and losing. After that, they're going to have a bye week, cool down or whatever. Think about what they did, and then play Seattle and San Francisco, where I think they're both going to be wins. After that, they play Denver, and I think that's going to be a win for them too, as Denver comes down to Houston and get not annihilated, but loses to Denver, or not loses to Denver. Denver loses to Houston, my bad. Then they play Jacksonville and Tennessee again, where it's going to be wins. They play Buffalo, not beat Buffalo, they lose to Buffalo, and then they play the Colts and they win that one. After that, I do feel like they are going to lose to Kansas City, and then they play Arizona and Las Vegas, where I think they are both going to be wins. And then they play a trap game against the LA Chargers, another decent team, and they're going to end up losing, just like last year. After that, they play the Indianapolis Colts. I feel like they're not going to play their starters, and they're going to end up losing that game too. So with that being said, I do have them winning. So I do have them going 11-6. Ceiling, in my opinion, their ceiling is probably 13-4, and their floor is probably going to be 9-8, if not 8-9, depending on how healthy this team stays. The O line was a big problem last year, and I feel like they definitely improved despite losing Tonsil. And yeah, I definitely want to see how this team does. And the next team that we are going to be talking about here is the Indianapolis Colts, as they had a pretty disappointing season last year, and this year they have guys such as Anthony Richardson, Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman Jr., and so on the offensive side. They also have Tyler Warren, the newcomer, the new rookie they drafted. On the defensive side, they got Chardavius Ward, and they also got DeForest Buckner. They did have a tough little schedule release on the Gram or whatever, which we are not here to talk about the Gram. We're here to talk about them. I think the Colts are not going to be doing that well, despite having a solid offense. But I feel like Anthony Richards' performance is going to play a big factor to them. And first game against Miami, I think that's a loss. After they lose to Miami, I see them losing to Denver, and after Denver they play Tennessee. I feel like they're going to end up beating, and then they're going to lose to the Rams and beat the Raiders. After that, they play the Arizona Cardinals. I feel like that can be a win too. So they go on a 2-game win streak. Then they play the Chargers. They're going to lose that one, and then play Tennessee again, where I feel like they're going to lose because Tennessee is going to get their revenge game, and it's going to be personal. After that, they play Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers, it's going to be a close game with them. I feel like Pittsburgh wants their revenge, so I feel like they're going to lose that one. And then they play Atlanta, which I think that's another loss. After that, they played the Chiefs, Houston, and Jacksonville, which I honestly think all three can be losses possibly. And after that, Seattle and San Francisco. I feel like Seattle will be a win, but San Francisco will be a loss. In Jacksonville and Houston, I feel like both games will be losses. And I feel like they'll surprisingly get swept by Jacksonville. So with that being said, I definitely see them winning about 7 to 8 games this season. Honestly, I feel like the highest that they can possibly, or the most wins they could possibly have, is about 10 wins. So about 10-7 is the highest ceiling, and the lowest ceiling probably about a 5-12, maybe 4-13 record, depending on how they do. But my honest opinion, I say 7-10, missed out on the playoffs completely. And the next team that we are going to be talking about here, y'all, is the Jacksonville Jaguars. I really wonder what this team is going to be like with Travis Hunter on the field. Is he really going to play two sides? And right now on the depth chart, it looks like Travis Hunter is going to be the wide receiver one, but be a backup defensive back. Looks like a second stringer. So it looks like he will be playing possibly both sides. And for the Jaguars, I honestly think that this season is going to be still kind of a rebuilding year for them. They have Travis Hunter, Brian Thomas Jr., Trevor Lawrence. He's not a bad quarterback, in my opinion, and Travis Etienne Jr. Not a bad line, or not a bad lineup. It's the offensive line that is real questionable. And then on defense, they got Josh Allen, not the quarterback, Josh Hines Allen. And they also have Devon Hamilton, Ark Armstead, Trayvon Walker, and so on. And I honestly think that this Jaguars team is going to not have a good year, as I feel like they're going to begin with first game of the year, lose to Carolina, and then after that they lose to Cincinnati, Houston, and San Francisco. So three straight losses, honestly. Then they go ahead and play Kansas City. I feel like that's going to be another game where they lose. After that, they play Seattle, and I feel like they're going to get their first win there. Then when they play Seattle, they're going to play Los Angeles, and when they play Los Angeles, it's going to be another loss. So they are going to end up being on a bye week as 1-6. That is going to be pretty bad, really bad. Then they play the Las Vegas Raiders. I feel like that is going to be a good game. Genty versus Hunter, the two Heisman candidates, which Hunter did win the Heisman, obviously. And I feel like that, yeah, the Jaguars are going to go ahead and beat the Raiders. Next thing you know, they play Houston, they lose. They play the Chargers, they lose. They play the Cardinals, they lose again. And then they play Tennessee, they are going to win. After that, they play the Colts. I feel like that's going to be a lost cause. Then they play the Jets. I feel like that's going to be a win. And then they play Denver, which is going to be a loss. And then the Colts, I feel like that's going to be another win. And then they play the Titans for the last game of the season, which will be a win. So with that being said, I do see them winning about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 games, 6-11 as the record. Ceiling, I say 8-9. Floor is probably 4-13, if not 3-14, possibly. But I honestly feel like this Jaguars team is not going to be that well, and I feel like they're going to win about a cool 6 games. They are in a weak AFC South division, so they could be the third or possibly the second best, depending on how this looks. Because the only team that's really good in the AFC South is the Houston Texans, and with that being said, I definitely don't think that the Jaguars are going to be in no playoffs or be having a winning record probably until a couple years later when they get their teams together. So next, the second to last team that we are going to cover here before we end this video is the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs are coming off a brutal, not brutal, but a very, very, very embarrassing Super Bowl loss against the Philadelphia Eagles, led by Jalen Hurts. This Kansas City Chiefs team didn't do well. They did really well this year, but they was getting bailed out a lot. Yes, a lot by the refs for multiple games straight, where they won most of their games by, not most of their games, but half of their games by at least one possession. But a win's a win, and they had a good record. Went to the Super Bowl and lost 22-40 to the Eagles, where this team is led by Patrick Mahomes. They got Isaiah Pacheco, who is coming off injury, and they also have Rashee Rice, who's going to be coming off injury, and they have Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, Travis Kelce, and so on. And this O-line looks pretty good with Trey Smith and Creed Humphrey leading the way. And on the defensive side, they got Chris Jones, George Karlaftis, Mike Denna. They also have Nick Bolton, Trent McDuffie, and so on. This defense is pretty good. And honestly, I think that this Chiefs team is going to have a pretty good season once again. Starting off with a week 1 win, easily peasy lemon squeezy. They're going to go ahead and beat the Los Angeles Chargers. I know that sounds corny. And then the next game is going to be Philly, the rematch. And I feel like this is going to be a revenge game for Kansas City. And they're going to feel the hunger, the breeze, and all that. but I also feel like that they are also going to fall by 3 points to Philly. So I say they lose to the Eagles. Giants, Baltimore, those are both wins. Jacksonville, that's a win. They lose to Detroit, though. I definitely see them losing there. And then they play the Raiders. I feel like that's going to be a win. And then the Commanders, I feel like they are going to give out a really good fight. Not only a really good fight, but they are going to have a surprising win, in my opinion, as Jalen Daniels just tears Kansas City defense apart, making them already have 3 losses. So starting the season off 5-3 before they play Buffalo, and then they're going to have to rematch with Buffalo, where I think they are going to end up losing that one too. So 5-4 before the bye week, then they come back and play Denver, Indianapolis, and Dallas, where they all 3 wins. Houston, LA, Tennessee, all 3 wins. And I also think that Denver and Las Vegas, the last 2 games of the season, is going to be wins. So with that being said, I say Kansas City goes 13-4, only losing to Detroit, Washington, Buffalo, and and Philadelphia. And I definitely see them going back to the Super Bowl and possibly getting their revenge against Philly, if not possibly playing against Detroit. Honestly, and in my honest opinion, I think that Buffalo, Baltimore, or Kansas City is going to go to the Super Bowl on the AFC side. In the NFC side, I definitely think it's going to be Detroit, Philly, and Washington Commanders. Definitely. But other than that, we are going to get to our last, and I mean our last team. This took me a really long time to get through. I know, I'm sorry for the late post. If that, I know it's probably 9 p.m. when y'all watching this. I don't know. Or y'all probably even watching it on a Sunday morning. I really don't know. But the next and the last team before we end this video is the Las Vegas Raiders. Yes, the Las Vegas Raiders, where Ashton Genty is playing at, of course. And we already know they have Genty. But who else would they have? They have as their quarterback right now Geno Smith, which I was not wrong about. They have Jacoby Myers, Brock Bowers, who was really good, had 1,000 yards last season, and a mediocre offensive line where the defense, they have Max Crosby, who's questionable right now, but the season hasn't even started yet, and Elaine Roberts, and so on. This Raiders defense doesn't look all that good outside from Crosby, who pretty much carries the defense on a daily basis. And I honestly think that the Las Vegas Raiders is going to have a not so good season unless somebody like Ashton Genty breaks out, which that's another thing. Brock Bowers and Ashton Genty definitely think they're going to have breakout years. Geno Smith has a pretty solid year throwing the ball and on the ground. And Max Crosby has about an 11 to 15 sack season, which I think that's pretty realistic to say. And for the Raiders, I think they're going to start off high, beating the New England Patriots. I feel like they're going to absolutely annihilate them first game of the season. Probably a shutout, a 24-0 shutout, probably at New England. Then they play the Chargers, where they're going to lose. And then play the Commanders, another loss. And then they're going to play Chicago and Indianapolis, both losses. They play Tennessee, and I feel like that's going to be another loss, possibly. Yes, a surprising loss for them, where they're going to play Kansas City and lose. After that, they're going to be 0-7. I think they're going to start off 0-7 before hitting the bye week, or not 0-7, 1-7 before hitting 1-6, hitting the bye week. Then they play Jacksonville. They're gonna lose. They play Denver and Dallas, both losses. They play Cleveland. I think that's gonna be a win. Honestly, Genty versus Shador, or yeah, Genty versus Garrett. I feel like they're gonna win, despite Cleveland having a solid defense over the Vegas Raiders. But you gotta realize it is the NFL. And then the Chargers, they get their revenge game and win. So that's their third win. Then they play Denver, Philly, and Houston. And they're going to end up losing to all 3 of them, feeling like they're going to get annihilated again by Denver. And yeah, losing to a really good Houston team and Philly team who's stacked top to bottom. After that, they play the Giants. They barely, and I mean barely, beat the Giants while they play Kansas City, which Kansas City is probably going to be resting their players, but I still think they are going to lose. But other than that, I definitely think they are going to win about 5 games. So go 5-12 is my expectation. I think their ceiling is going to be about a cool 7-10, 8-9, and the floor is probably going to be a 2-15, 3-13, or 3-14. My bad. But with that being said, y'all, I know it's dark in here. Thank you guys for enjoying this video. If you guys want to see more content, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and don't forget to follow my Barstool page. Also, don't forget the 10-day summer cast is coming up too. Y'all can go see that soon, June 3rd to June 13th. And with that being said, thank you guys for enjoying. I'll post part 2 Sunday. And with that being said, I'll see y'all next time. Peace.